him.
I want to watch the news.
Are you making headway at least?
This is the news.
Schmack-a-ma-gob, everybody. Hey, it is Black Sabbath Sunday, and it is the only news that matters. And it's been well reported over the years that despite being the first ever guitarist in Ozzy Osbourne's solo band, the late great Randy Rhodes was not a Black Sabbath fan growing up. But that was the opposite when Zakk Wylde, who was an extraordinarily well-versed in Sabbath before signing on with the Prince of Darkness, drawing heavy influences from Tony Iommi. It turns out that this was also the case with another Ozzy guitarist, Jakey Lee. During an interview with Tone Talk, by the way, that interview is so awesome that I've gotten several stories out of that interview. But then again, every Jakey Lee interview is awesome. But anyway, this Tone Talk interview, Lee explains how Iommi's riffing affected his own playing style. He said, "My heavy-handedness comes from because I had an acoustic, but I'd listen to Black Sabbath. And so to get that attack and everything, I just had to really dig in." During the interview, Jakey Lee admitted how being largely self-taught is what made him so unique as a guitar player. He said, I did take guitar lessons from this guy at Harper's Music in Chula Vista for about a month. And then he said, there really nothing I can show that you don't know or that you're going to figure out anyway, unless you want to play some other kind of guitar other than rock. And I said, no. Okay, I'm fine. But yeah, mostly self-taught. And that's why I got a lot of shit wrong. And Jakey Lee's unique playing style was formed by incorrectly learning the placements of a famous scale used in rock guitar soloing. He said, and the other was, what do you call that pattern? If you're playing an E and you're playing on the 12th fret with your index finger, that pattern, you know, the pentatonic. But that's what 80% of licks and solos are based around. I thought it was the 10th fret, index finger on the 10th fret, and then doing that pattern. But I'd be doing like Chuck Berry riffs by pulling up on the B string from the 10th fret. I thought it was all based around that. So it helped me play in different areas on guitar that maybe I wouldn't have so much if I knew how to play right. Lee also explained that unlike nowadays when beginners guitarists can learn licks from seemingly endless numbers of videos on YouTube, it was much more difficult way back then. He said, I didn't realize I was doing it wrong because there wasn't a lot of rock on TV back in the 70s. The only time I'd really ever see it was on PBS, and they'd have Chuck Berry on once. And I saw him do the licks, and he was doing, you know, these patterns, and I'm like, motherfucker. I tried and said, well, that's a lot easier. There you go. Jakey Lee rules, and yes, he was influenced by the great Tony Iommi like everybody. But Randy Rhodes, you know. But man, do I love what Randy Rhodes does on Children of the Grave, from the tribute and the Ozzy Osbourne live album, which I feel is the best live album he ever released. And Randy doing Children of the Grave was just so fucking lethal. I mean, no, I don't think it tops what Black Sabbath did, because I think the Black Sabbath version on Master Reality is the greatest Black Sabbath song, period. You know, all that percussion and stuff going on in that studio version, it just can't be beat. But man, do I love what Randy did on that song. Well, as far as like Paranoid and what's the other one? Iron Man. Nothing special. You know, I mean, Paranoid, you know, it didn't blow my mind. That or Iron Man, especially since Iron Man is not even the complete song. There's no guitar solo from the great Randy Rhodes on the Iron Man, you know, version. But yeah, he wasn't a fan, and you know, he didn't want to do that Speak of the Devil album. Was dead set against it. And then he actually ended up saying, you know what, I'll do it as long as, you know, I get to leave after I do Speak of the Devil and one more studio album, and I'm done. Contract's done, I'm out. So they agreed, and the whole thing was planned to be videotaped, like a professional video of that show up in Canada. The whole Sabbath set. That was in the works. That's what was being planned. I don't think the band rehearsed yet. I highly doubt that, but you know, it wasn't until they brought Brad Gillis that they started to rehearse, you know, I believe. Just like, what was it, 10 days before that? But anyway, I think if Randy would have lived, my God, can you imagine? Randy would have lived and recorded that full album, nothing but Sabbath songs, and it would be pro shot. Wow, you know? No really, you know, other than that TV studio, there's no pro shot concert with Randy Rhodes, even though there is rumored there's I think it was in Largo, was filmed, and Sharon's got it, and she won't release it. That's the rumor. That sounds extremely believable. But yeah, I would have loved to hear Randy's spin on it. Like, if he would have spin like all those Sabbath songs like he did on Children of the Grave, because to me, Ozzy's with Randy doing Children of the Grave sounds like an 80s heavy metal version, where Sabbath's version was 70s, but also eternal. But yeah, there was a 80s vibe, and that if that 80s vibe would have been injected into like, well, you know, I mean, it actually is, if you really think about it. Brad Gillis really did inject a lot of 80s. But geez, man, I would have loved to hear Randy Rhodes interpret it. But at the same time, I ain't complaining. Brad Gillis nailed it with Tommy Aldridge and Rudy Sarzo. Nailed it. And Ozzy nailed it too in the studio after the show. I gotta say, man, it's one, for me, in my personal opinion, it may be the last amazing live album I've ever heard. I've never heard an album as amazing as Speak of the Devil since Speak of the Devil. Not even the tribute stuff and, you know, the Ozzy Live. I love all that. But there was a vibe to Speak of the Devil, man. And, you know, the 80s haven't crept in enough yet to ruin live albums for me. Because live albums, for me, were ruined by MTV. You know, video killed the radio star. Video also killed the live albums, in my opinion. But Ozzy Osbourne, Speak of the Devil, that was right at the cusp of filming. This is, you know, I think there were like Journey and April Wine. A few bands already did the Saturday night concert on MTV, and Ozzy was next, man. And I'm sure that Speak of the Devil was going to probably be filmed. Definitely be filmed for MTV, because at the time there wasn't really music videos. There was, but it was very limited and very expensive. I'll never forget one time I was in a mall here on the beach, and this is like early 80s. Before I even had a VCR, but they had it in a glass case. They had REO Speedwagon Live Infidelity on VHS. And I'll never forget this. This shit cost $50. In the early 80s, no less. $50 is what? $5 billion today? I mean, it's a way more than it was like in 81 and stuff. So, yeah, it probably would have went on MTV. And then a few years later, probably released on home video, though. You know, the Jakey Lee, Bark at the Moon, Salt Lake City. Yeah, it was released on home video by bootleggers. But my point is that, speaking of the devil rules, I wish Randy was still alive, man. I wish he would have done that third Ozzy album. But, you know, we got Speak of the Devil, and we got the great Jakey Lee. To me, he is the best replacement for Randy Rhodes. Hands down. Hands down. He proved it in Ozzy, and he proved it even more to me when I saw Badlands live. It was unbelievable. One of the greatest guitar players ever. And when I saw him at Badlands doing jams and stuff, these extended jams, my jaw hit the floor, man. Jakey Lee really rules pretty damn hard. So there you go, man. Thank you, everybody, for watching The Only News That Matters. And please leave your comments below about the great Jakey Lee, Randy Rhodes, Speak of the Devil. Don't you agree, man? As badass as Brad Gillis was, wouldn't it have been cool to hear Randy's take on it? That would have been freaking amazing, in my opinion. But thank you all again, and please subscribe to my channel if you haven't. Ring that little notification bell, and like the video, because that's good for the YouTube algorithms. So stay frosty, listen to Black Sabbath, and smack 'em a gob.
Farewell and adieu to you fair Spanish ladies. Farewell and adieu, you ladies of Spain. For we've received orders for to sail back to Boston. And so never more shall we see you again.